Hi everyone. I am recording a screencast lecture that is focusing on grammar and writing style per my most recent announcement. Excuse me. And I've got two of your classmates volunteered their profile of a place assignment for this video lecture. So I thank them for that. And what I've done with the first one is I've just gone ahead and quickly set it up in APA. You did not have to do APA for the profile of a place assignment, but I thought I'm working with writing, so I may as well show APA. I've already set it up in this one. When I bring up the second writing, the second profile of place assignment, I will put it in APA format, so you'll be able to see how I do that. And I'm going to really try to focus on kind of sentence level things and writing styles. So, commas, best practices in academic writing. I'm going to do my best to stay away from things like content or what we call higher order concerns. So I don't want to be addressing things like thesis statement and cohesion and organization. So I'm not, the focus of this video lecture is not those larger order things. It's kind of the smaller, quote unquote smaller things. But I wanted to do this because I did notice that a lot of people seem to be struggling with, or maybe have some confusion about academic writing style and particularly punctuation. So that's my goal. So I'm going to do my best. As a writing person, it's hard to focus in on just that, because you also want to say other things like, oh, this could have been improved if we moved this from here to here, or a better thesis statement might look like this. But I'm going to do my best to stay away from that, because that's not the objective. Okay, so this was the profile of a place was being written on, I don't know if it's pronounced Triberg, but I'm going to call it Triberg. So if that's not the way it's pronounced, I apologize. I'm just going to give you kind of a glimpse right now of what it looks like. I probably won't go through the entire thing, but I'll go through a bulk of it, or where I see things happening, and I'm not necessarily going to read through everything. So the first thing here is that's underlined by word, because this is a fragment, so the wonders of the world. So and there were across everybody's profile of a place, there were I'd say a decent amount of fragments. It wasn't it wasn't an enormous issue, but there were quite a lot of papers that had fragments. And the reason I think that is because the nature of this type of writing, which I wouldn't call creative, because it is falling in within an academic genre, but it can sometimes lead to more of that we can throw some of the rules out, so to speak, of grammar and writing and syntax, that the creative writing world, can break those rules for particular reasons. When we're in the academic world, we really have to stick by those rules clearly. So this is a fragment, and in the writings that you do for this class, you want to stay away from fragments. So you want to make sure you have, we have what are called independent clauses and dependent clauses. So this is what we would call a dependent clause, because an independent clause has both a subject and a verb, and a dependent clause is called dependent because it's dependent on the subject or verb from the independent clause, which is a full sentence, a complete thought, that type of thing. So just kind of continuing to look at this introduction, right? I'm just kind of reading through. If you've never gone exploring outside of your comfort zone, I hope this will get you thinking about what is out there to see and experience. This is about a wonderful place, a city named Triberg. I believe Triberg is a city anyone can enjoy and love as an individual or as a family. So this right here is what we call a comma splice. So, and when we have a comma splice, and I'll explain what that means, because I made that note for almost everybody. So we've got these two, I highlighted those two things. We have, this is about a wonderful place. That's an independent clause, right? It's a full sentence. It has a subject and a verb, and has this and is. which is the subject and the verb. And then the second thing I highlighted is a city named Triberg. So that is a dependent clause. So it's missing a grammatical subject. It has an object. The object is city because the city is the object. So the wonderful place, right, is city. So the city is the object qualifying the wonderful place. So, but then there's a comma here. So what that's doing is that is breaking up grammatically in a way we don't want it to break up. So what would work best here is a colon, which is so sorry, I was just thinking about other punctuation to use there. But a colon, I believe, would work best because the purpose of a colon is, so when you have a colon, what goes before the colon has to be a full sentence, or it has to be really what we call an independent clause. So this is a full independent clause, which is good. So what comes after a colon does not have to be a full independent clause. It can be a list, it can be information that the reader expects to come. So this is about a wonderful place. Okay, what is that wonderful place? It's a city named Triberg, right? So this is where a colon would work really well here. Other ways to get around this sentence would be to just reword this. So you could say something, right, this is about Triberg, or this is about the city of Triberg, a wonderful place. So, or this is about the city of Triberg, which is a wonderful place to visit. You could reword the sentence. Okay. Just a note about exclamation points. A lot of people use exclamation points. Again, I believe it's because of what this the writing assignment kind of feels like. But just as a note, in academic writing, we never want to use exclamation points. It's very serious, and the only time you would ever use one is if you were pulling it from a quotation. If your research or your source has an exclamation point in it and you happen to be quoting that, then you would keep it. But outside of that, we don't use exclamation points. Of course, I didn't mark anybody down for that type of thing. I really wasn't looking to do that. This is one of the first kind of larger. It's not that long of an assignment, but in terms of all the other assignments you've been doing, this one is a bit longer. So I was not going to be like, your first assignment, I'm going to dock you on everything. It's not going to happen. Okay, so again, this is another fragment here. This could easily be solved by doing, just adding a verb, right? Triberg, Germany is a city located in the middle of the Black Forest, right? So in order to make that not a fragment, you just need a verb there tacked after the subject. So this is, and I'm just going to make this a little bit larger so everybody could see. Okay. So, home of Germany's tallest waterfall. So this is also a fragment. And this is also missing a possession. So the tallest waterfall belongs to Germany, right? So which is why we need that apostrophe S there. But this is also a fragment. So this could be easily fixed by just adding a coordinating conjunction, which is and. So Triberg, Germany is a city located in the middle of the Black Forest, and home, I would say home to rather than of, just to change prepositions, and home to Germany's tallest waterfall. Excuse me. Okay, so next sentence. I'm just going to highlight the next two sentences here. As you step out of your motel room, no matter where it is located, you will never experience the same kind of air. It is a pure and clean atmosphere. As you inhale and exhale, you'll never feel freer from the world's toxins. Okay, so we have a comma here, and this is correct. As you step out of your motel room, and that's because this is what we call a subordinating introductory phrase because it's starting with as, which is a subordinating conjunction, and it's as boring and awful as talking about subordinating conjunctions sounds. It's actually really important to understand subordinating and coordinating conjunctions because that has almost everything to do with commas. So because not only is this just and I can show you the difference, because if we take the as off, we just have you step out of your motel room. So that is an independent clause, right? It has the subject you and it has the verbs, right? Step out, blah, blah, blah. And then it has an object. So when the subordinating conjunction as is put in front of that, it does what we call subordinate, which means make less important. So now we have as you step out of your motel room. So now it's no longer an independent clause. So once we've put that subordinating conjunction at the beginning of that, it is now no longer an independent clause, it's now a dependent clause. So that needs to have a comma that comes after it, because that will then, any introductory phrase like that needs a comma to separate before the grammatical subject. And the grammatical subject for this full clause is you. So there's actually two introductory phrases here, so that means we need another comma here, because we have as you step out of your motel room, and then no matter where it is located. And then we get to the grammatical subject of the sentence. You will never experience the same kind of error. It is a pure and clean atmosphere as you inhale, and this is, I'm just going to bring this to your attention because we have as again, right, which is a subordinating conjunction. When the as is like this in the middle of a clause, in the middle of an independent clause, you don't put a comma before a subordinating conjunction when it's in the middle. So this is correct. As you inhale and exhale, you'll never feel freer from the world's toxin. Now, we have a comma here. So if I read this full sentence again, it is a pure and clean atmosphere as you inhale and exhale, you'll never. So what this really needs, because this is actually in its current state, this comma is acting as a comma splice. So what I would do is I would either put like that. So what I did was I added a coordinating subjunction. The coordinating subjunctions are the fanboys, if you've heard of them. There's for and nor, but or yet so. So, and what they do is they join either independent clauses with independent clauses or independent clauses with dependent clauses. And so do subordinating conjunctions, but depending on if it's a coordinating subjunction or a subordinating conjunction, that will inform what type of punctuation you use. So when we have a full sentence here, right, this is an independent clause, we have another prepositional introductory phrase here, correctly followed by a comma, and then we have another independent clause here. So we have independent clause. I'm going to run out of colors soon enough. An independent clause here. And then we have the coordinating conjunction there. I guess we'll use a gray. When you have independent clause, and coordinating conjunction, excuse me, saying those things again and again can get hard, you want a comma before that. So that would be more grammatical. It would be grammatically correct, whereas before, without that and, which is connecting the two ideas together, without that, the comma that is here was creating a comma splice. Okay. So next sentence, surrounded by pure nature, you'll experience the purest form of oxygen. So we need a comma here because this is a verbal introductory phrase. I think I was using blue for introductory phrases. So surrounded by nature, comma, again, that introductory phrase comes before the grammatical subject of the sentence, which is you, again. So you need that comma to separate the introductory phrase from the grammatical subject. And then here, the writer is doing correct. They have the prepositional introductory phrase followed by a comma that comes before the grammatical subject, so this is good. You'll see the tallest trees all around you, beautiful green leaves, and at the base of each one, a light snow still covers the ground, ready to make the perfect snowball. Okay, so this is a little bit confusingly written. So what I would recommend if this were a revision, if you guys were revising this, I would tell the student to join these to all be one thing, because this all has to do with this idea of you stopping and looking around and the things that you'll see. So you'll see the tallest trees around you, beautiful green leaves, comma, and comma, because it's coming before a subordinator, and at the base of each one, comma. So we are putting this entire subordinating clause, we're surrounding it with commas. A light snow still covers the ground, ready to make the perfect snowball. So if we reread that sentence, now that we've joined those, as you stop and look around, you'll see the tallest trees all around you, beautiful green leaves, and at the base of each one, a light snow still covers the ground, ready to make the perfect snowball. Now, this here, I'm a little confused because this is what we call a vague pronoun. I'm not sure if the one is referring to the trees or to the leaves. I'm assuming it's tree, though I don't know for sure, so that's like a question I would ask the writer, like, what is it at the base of each tree? You know, what exactly are you talking about here? But we'll just pretend that it's tree. And then this is underlined because it is needing commas, and then there's some improper spelling here. So it's, now that you're up and moving around, you're ready for breakfast. So first of all, we have, and I just want you guys to get in the habit now of not using contractions, because that's not considered academic / formal writing. So I would just start to get in the habit of just not writing contractions. So instead of your, y-o-u apostrophe r-e, just full spell out, you know, you are. So now that you are up and moving around, and we need a comma there because this, now that you're up and moving around, that is not a independent clause, right? This is a dependent clause, so we have to, so it's an introductory phrase before the grammatical subject, but this is also a you are ready for breakfast. No, so now that you up or around, you're ready for breakfast. As you start walking into town, and here's the the subordinating introductory phrase. As you start walking into town, comma, grammatical subject, you close your eyes and just listen. You can hear the wind whistling through the trees and the Clydesdales' feet clopping on the cobblestones as the pool, I think it's as they pull the tourist wagon down the road. Now this, we need possession because the feet belong to the Clydesdales. So I don't know, this is something I would ask the writer if it were in revision, but I would say I don't know if it needs to be singular or possessive, but I'm going to just say it's a plural possession. So the singular is Clydesdale. So if we add an S and then apostrophe, this tells the reader that it's multiple Clydesdales, and I think that's what the writer is saying, that there are multiple Clydesdales, but if not, right, then like that would tell me there's one Clydesdale, but we're going to pretend that it's plural possessive. And correct, because there's no comma before this subordinating conjunction here, so that's great. So again, just to get in the use of writing in formal language rather than informal language. Children laughing and playing in the distant at the town park, available for all to come and play. So this is a fragment. So this, I believe, is still talking about the things that you can hear, because before the writer was telling us about the things that you'll see, and now they're telling us about the things that you'll hear. So what I would do is join these. So you can hear the wind whistling through the trees and the Clydesdale's feet clopping on the cobblestones. I think that needs to be plural. As they pull the tourist and I would say just to stick with all the pluralness, tourist wagons down the road. There's multiple ways to join these. I might just go to an additionally. Okay, so what I did is I made that not a fragment because I added a subject and a verb similar to the subjects that have been in all of the sentences heretofore. This part, I'm a little I don't know if there's a word that's wrong. What makes sense to me is something like that. But so you will hear the sounds. I have the wrong verb tense, sorry. You hear the sounds of, or if we want to stay in the same verb, I'm looking at this verb tense up here, so I'm just trying to stay in the same verb tense. So you can hear the sounds of children laughing and playing in the distance at the town park, available for all to come and play. Just to change topics for just a second, prepositions are something that you want to be aware of because they make for really wordy writing. And if you've ever been told that you have awkward phrasing or that you have wordy writing, I have been told that throughout my entire life. So prepositions are probably my arch nemesis number one. So I see them constantly. I can't not ever see them. I can't talk now. But just looking at this sentence alone, I'm just going to highlight the preposition. So we've got of, we have in, we have at, we have for. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 just in one sentence. For me, that's way too many. I've often taught in face-to-face courses an activity where you have to eliminate prepositions by 80%, minimum 50%, and that's at least having no more than one preposition per sentence, and if possible, having no prepositions. And that's because prepositions are those small words, like you can see here, of, in, at, for. Also, to is one. To is not one here because to here is functioning as a verb, to come and to play, right? So it's functioning as a verb in the infinitive form. But if I was like, do you want to come with me to the beach, right? Do you want to come with me to the beach? To the beach, that's a preposition form. Because remember, prepositions do have a grammatical function. Their grammatical function is positionality. So it's meant to let you know where something is or how something is situated. So in that case, it's to where, or it's to the beach. So in that case, that would be a preposition. But prepositions are these small words that we tend to overuse when we don't have the vocabulary or know-how of how else to write something without having to rely on these small words to work for us. So and this is what we call editing for concision. That's a whole other lecture that I'm not going to get into today. I'm just pointing it out to you to be aware of prepositions, and there are a lot of prepositions. So I can certainly give the activity that I've given to students in the past, just so you can, if you want to do the activity, if you're really looking to improve your writing, it gives you a specific activity goes, and it also has to do with the to be verb. So is, are, was, were, become, became, becoming, had been, having been, anything, with to be. It also is about minimizing your use of the to be verb and also of prepositions. So if you're really looking to improve your writing, those are two of the minimizing the to be verb and minimizing prepositions as a way to do editing for concision gets us out of these kind of confusing and wordier sentences, which is so it's much better for your reader, but it's much better for you as a writer as well, because clarity and concision is really what you want. You want to use as few words as possible, and you want to make sure that every word you have there is grammatically necessary. Okay, I'm going to move on, otherwise I could talk about prepositions all day. But suddenly you smell something great. I would put a comma here because it's a one-word introductory phrase, and this is the grammatical subject. Being new to the area, again, that's a verbal introductory phrase, so we would need a comma before the grammatical subject. You cannot quite figure out what it is. As you come around the corner of the building, right, and then we need you are walking by and see a small food trailer parked on the side of the road. The smell is getting stronger as you approach, and you see, and this is perfect comma use because, and I'm just going to show you why. We have a independent clause here and an independent clause here. Right? We have smell and is getting, right? That's our predicate, our verb, and then our subject. And then in the second one, we've got you and see, so subject and verb. They're joined by a coordinating conjunction, and then so before that, when you have independent clause, coordinating conjunction, you need a comma between those. So your stomach is growling in hunger now as you go ahead and order one. A little informal, a little wordy there. So for example, here's an is that we don't need. A lot of time people use is and then a gerund or an ing verb. So really you're using two verbs when you really only need one. So like your stomach growls in hunger now is not necessary, I think. And I would actually, instead of using coordinator, I would use a subordinator as, I would use a coordinating so. I would just say, so you order one. And also notice I'm editing for concision as I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 words, versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 instead of 7 words. So after you have fulfilled your hunger, again, we need a comma. After is a preposition. So this is a prepositional introductory phrase, so comma before the grammatical subject, as you start looking around to do something next. You notice a cobblestone path, and cobblestone before was one word, so I'm going to, when we had the Clydesdales on it, so I'm going to make that one word. You notice a cobblestone path leading into the woods. Now this is a run-on because we have independent clause, coordinating conjunction, but there's no comma here. So that's what we call a run-on. When you've got two independent clauses or more, and you've got coordinating conjunctions, but you don't have the commas. And you need the commas because you're separating subject-verb from subject-verb. If it were this would be independent clause, coordinating conjunction, dependent clause, because decide to follow it is now depending on the you from this independent clause. We wouldn't want a comma because we don't want to grammatically separate, because we're not separating verb subject and then verb subject. We have subject verb. I'm getting it backwards. You have subject verb, and so that second verb needs the first subject. And so that's why we don't put a comma there, because we don't grammatically separate it. But if the writer did want to include the subject a second time, then we would need a comma there. As you approach the tree line, I would also, another note I would give to this student is I would say do a search for how many times you use as, because that's one thing as a writer is you want to understand when you overuse or abuse a word a lot. I know for me, I tend to overuse the phrase not only but also. So not only ... but also. I use that way too much, so I always have to search for that. I use the word that too much. I use the word this too much. I use the word ground a lot. So like I as a writer am aware of the words that, and I'm sure I'm not aware of all of them, but I'm aware of at least some of the words and phrases that I use far too many times. And that comes through proofreading your work and reading it out loud and becoming familiar with the way that you write. So I would say, not all of these are like some of these are just, it's finding like the AS and other words. But I would, tell the writer, I think you're probably overusing the subordinator as, so you might want to think about, adding some variety to your writing style, because you see, as you've seen just in the part of this work that I've been going through, hopefully you've noticed a pattern in this writer's style, that there tends to be a subordinating introductory clause starting with as, and then grammatical subject use, so introductory phrase, comma, independent clause, introductory phrase, comma, independent clause. So one of my notes, if this were a revision assignment, I might say, talk about variety and writing style, which is something that is desired. We want variety in your writing style. So as you enter the tree line, again, we need a comma there. You instantly feel the cool, refreshing air that keeps whistling through the trees. You continue up the path. As the waterfall comes into view, again, same pattern, you feel a slight mist on your face from the falling water. You have now reached the rail at the base of the waterfall, that's just one word, and look up. There you see the most beautiful sight in the world. This I would say is a little bit of choppy writing. This is getting into a higher order concern, which is cohesion. But this is another place where a colon would be worthwhile, because there's an extra space there, because this, if we look at the two ideas here, right, we've got there you see the most beautiful sight in the world, and then the sun rays shining through the tops of the trees at the top of the waterfall. Ugh, so many prepositions, sorry. They are connected. So these aren't things that you would want to grammatically separate with a period. You would want to have that first independent clause there. You see the most beautiful sight in the world, colon, now let me tell you what it is. The sun rays shining through the top thing. This we need is sun rays one word? I guess it is. So, but that needs possession. No, it doesn't. What am I talking about? It's just a plural. It's just plural sun rays, no possession. Shining through the top of the trees. And I say there's a lot of prepositions here because we have in, through, of, at, and of. Okay. I'm not going to rewrite that sentence. I want to, but I'm not going to do it. Okay. I've spent enough time on this one, but that's for this particular writer we can see kind of the same things that are happening with this writer. So I'm going to go to the second piece. Okay, so here's the second writer's profile of a place, just to give you a glimpse. So I'm going to quickly, as I said before, I'm going to set it up in APA just so you can kind of have, I already posted a video on setting up things in APA, but this will provide you just additional help. But I'm going to do it quickly, so I'm not going to do it slowly. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure my margins are correct. So they are correct. They're 1 inch all the way around. I'm going to do the first header, but I want to make sure that I click different first page, otherwise I'll have to redo the whole thing. And then I'm going to insert page number. I'm going to manually click to have that justified to the right. And then I'm going to have running head. I think this is about Edinburgh Castle, so I'm going to write that as the title. I need my font to be correct, so I need it to be Times New Roman, including the page number. Some people forget to also change the page number font. And I'm hitting the space bar until this lines up here. I'm going to get a little slower. Once the page number drops down, hit delete or backspace. That's my first running head. This doesn't, here we go. And now I'm going to do the header for everything else that's not the cover page. Insert the page number. Manually move that over. Now we don't put running head, we just put, well, if I could spell it correctly. And we want our font correct. Size 12. And then we will space it. Again, pushing the space bar so this lines up with the margin over here. And this is why you always want to view your margin, or your margins, your rulers, so you can actually see where your margins are. Okay, so that is my header, are my headers for the APA page. Now I'm going to jump all this down onto page 2 and I'm going to make sure the spacing is correct, so I'm selecting everything. I'm going to open up that paragraph dialog box, making sure the spacing before and after is set at 0, and it's at double, so we have our spacing the way it's going to be. And then we're going to, again, oh geez, sorry, and then Embry-Riddle Aeronautical. Okay. And then just kind of eyeball it to make sure that it looks a little bit centered on the cover page. Okay. And then we're going to bump this back up. But we do need to restate the title. I want this to be over here because I want my title to be centered appropriately. Just giving it a fake title. Okay. Alright, so that's APA. That's it. Didn't take me too long, but I've also been doing it a long time. So once you figure it out, it's really easy. Okay, so now let's go back to focusing on the fun stuff, right? Grammar and stuff like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and look at the introduction. So in my many travels, we don't need this preposition here. In my many travels around the world, and this is an introductory phrase. This is in is a preposition, so it's a prepositional introductory phrase preceding the grammatical subject. So we want a comma there. There is one place that continues to inspire my imagination. Edinburgh Castle, and I believe that needs to be, I'm like 100% sure. Castle should be capitalized there because it's a specific castle, so it's a proper noun. Edinburgh Castle is one of the most beautiful sights in all of Scotland. Amidst, and this is actually would just be amid because amidst is British, so amidst, amongst, whilst, towards, and afterwards, those are all British. So the American is amid, among, while, toward, no S, and afterward, no S. So those are American. So amid all its stone walls lies a labyrinth of beautiful masonry that consists of misshapen stones and moss-filled crevices. And just to further underscore not using contractions, it is this architecture that draws the eyes to this most profound structure. There's two thises in this sentence. Here and here. So this is underlined, but this is word thinking it might be the verb to stonewall, but the writer is talking about not a verb but a noun, so that's correct even though word is saying it's not. So lies a labyrinth of beautiful masonry So just, again, because here's a place where we can get rid of a word. Anytime you can get rid of a word, that's a good thing. Consisting of misshapen stones and moss filled. I think it should be moss filled. A moss field is one thing, so because I think the crevices are filled with moss, is what I'm thinking. So it is this architecture that draws the eye. So a way to I'm just going to try to rewrite the sentence. Nope. I guess. I'm not the biggest fan of adverbs, but... So what I tried to do here is... I'm just going to strike that out. Is, in this one, it is... So we have a to be verb. This architecture that draws the eyes to this most profound structure. So this is wordy. And because it's wordy, it's a little bit confusing. So I tried to revise that into... a sentence that would be a little bit, would be without vague pronouns and without to be verbs. So I wrote the castle's profound structure and architecture, so I just made those two things the same in terms of a list, inevitably draws eyes toward it. And the it there is a pronoun, but it's very clear that it's an antecedent. Its antecedent is castle. Or it could be structure, or it could be architecture, but regardless, it's all the same thing, essentially. So even before getting up close and personal to the castle, so that's a introductory phrase, you will be fascinated by the large rock formation it is set upon. Okay. This is, upon is a preposition, and you may have heard this before, but you don't want to end sentences with prepositions. And the reason is because, to go back to the conversation about prepositions, their grammatical purpose is positionality. So when you see a preposition, it should be followed with information about something. So when we end a preposition, and I think the most annoying one I can think of is I used to always, when I was leaving, when I was in grad school, and my friend and I would walk to the really large parking lot, I would say, where'd you park at? And that's a question ending in a paragraph, or in a preposition, and her response would always be at Preposition Street. And just annoyed me to death because I was like, I'm talking, I don't need to be writing an academic formal tone right now. But at the same time, it drives you crazy after a while when you become too familiar with this stuff. But all that to say, that's just an example of at is a preposition. If you say, where are you parked at, you can just say where are you parked. There's no grammatical need for the word at. I'm parked at, and then you say where you are parked at. I'm parked at the corner of whatever and whatever. Or I'm parked over there, right? Over is another preposition. Or I'm parked under the bridge, right? Preposition. I'm parked under where? Under the bridge. I'm parked over where? I'm parked over this, or across the street, right? So these are positionality that's telling the reader. So going back to upon, right? Upon again is position. Set upon. To revise something like this, you just have to move the location. This is what we call syntax. Syntax, or the syntactical structure of a sentence, just means the way you order your words. So we just need to move around the word so that it's not at the end of the sentence. So you will be fascinated by the large rock formation upon which the castle sits. And that's it. It's so easy, right? Took me many years to learn how to do that. But this is just to bring your attention to these types of things, because I did see a lot of sentences ending in prepositions throughout reading everybody's profile of a place. Its strategic placement allows onlookers the ability to see the entire city. Now, this is a red flag that I have for myself in my writing. Anytime I have subsequent sentences starting with the same thing, that's a red flag to join the sentences. Right, so its strategic placement allows onlookers the ability to see the entire city, comma, and the surrounding cliffs prevent would-be, this needs a hyphen because it's both are qualifying attacks, would-be attacks to a single frontal approach. So that's just not be careful, but just notice. Again, this is about realizing how you write as a writer. What are the types of things I do as a writer? This is something I do as a writer, but I tend to catch it pretty quickly when I do read-throughs and I read aloud. I've started 2 or 3 or even 4 sentences with the same subject, and that's something you want to avoid. Again, it goes back to the idea of adding variety to how you write, but then that's also a grammatical red flag that says maybe there's a way I can join these sentences together. The rock formation is covered in bright green mossy landscape. I would just put a comma here because we have a bit of a list, bright green and mossy. I don't think we need a comma here. I just think we want at least one to split up these 3 adjectives. Potentially you could do that, but I don't think it's necessary. It wouldn't be grammatically incorrect to have a hyphen there because green mossy landscape, right? You could the way to know if you need a hyphen is for adjectives that are describing a noun is this, the noun is landscape. Sorry, this is a bit of a tangent. You would say green landscape, mossy landscape. Do they work on their own? Yes. But if the writer for some reason meant to say green mossy landscape, like as one type of description, like the green is only because of the moss, then you would want the hyphen. To do that same thing with the would-be, right, we have the noun of attacks, so we would do would attacks and then be attacks. That doesn't make any sense, but when we have would-be attacks, with that hyphen we create the adjective that makes sense to qualify the noun attacks. Okay, that stretches and curves throughout the land. From the distance, this is a prepositional introductory phrase, you can smell the fish laden. Again, this is a place for a hyphen because we have our noun see, and then you would do each word. Fish see, laden see. Doesn't work. Hyphenate it. Fish laden sea. There we go. We're compounding our adjectives with a hyphen to qualify the noun. Forcing its way across the grove. There is also a strong taste of wet salt particles rising from the base of the cliffs. I was just wondering if that needed to be hyphenated, but I don't think it does because wet particles and salt particles make sense, although that would, just like green and mossy, it would just depend on what the writer meant. Okay. At the entrance to the castle, we need a comma here because this is a prepositional introductory phrase. And we can see here, hopefully you'll see the difference in the writing styles, whereas our other writer preferred subordinating introductory phrases. This writer prefers prepositional introductory phrases because we have at, which is a preposition, versus as, which is a subordinator. So you can hear the birds singing from a top. When you have a top, you don't need of, so just atop the tall pillars that make up the castle silhouette. The bricks and mortar look very old. You never need the word very, because what's the difference between old and very old? You're going to have a really hard time persuading me that there is a difference. What's the difference between hungry and very hungry? So very is just one of those words that we never need to use. look old and gray with signs of weathering everywhere. The walls feel rough but smooth depending on where your fingers land. A testament to, okay, so this is a place where a colon, not a semicolon, a colon can be used. Because, remember, before a colon, we need an independent clause. So the walls feel rough but smooth depending on where your fingers land. That's an independent clause. The colon then, what the reader expects after the colon is more qualification, more information about what comes before that colon. Now, what comes after a colon does not have to reiterate, does not have to be an independent clause. When you're working with a semicolon, that's very different. With a semicolon, you need an independent clause before and after. So this makes sense here. A testament to its age, I would put a comma here before the gerund, the ing verb. It was built in the Iron Age and is one of the most attacked buildings in the world. If the person wanted to use a semicolon for some reason, I just wouldn't recommend it. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to have a semicolon there. If anything, I would do a comma. But then it just gets wordier. And this is, like, you don't need that. That's why I think the colon would be the best grammatical solution there. Inside the castle, prepositional introductory phrase, comma, and then we have our grammatical subject. You are greeted by overwhelming tall ceilings and effortlessly large rooms. I'm not quite sure how this adverb is working to describe large rooms because I don't know what an effortless large room looks like. So that might, if this were a revision, I might ask the writer, can you clarify what this means? All the rooms are filled with this, again, we don't need musky, with this musky odor that we already have fills. So again, what's the difference between fill and completely fill? Like if I said, I filled the cup with water, you would probably presume that the cup was completely full. If I said I completely filled, is there a difference between I filled the cup of water versus I completely filled the cup with water? There's not. It's just an ly, an adverb that we don't need, that fills the air surrounding me. The castle is enormous with lots of stone rooms. Lots is a little bit informal. But, okay, and here we need a comma. And I'll tell you why. We need a comma there, comma there, comma there. And then we do a little bit of highlighting, and then I will wrap this up soon. Okay. So we've got independent clause. The castle is enormous with lots of stone rooms. And then I felt like I was transported back to the days of kings and queens with the authentic paintings and furniture. Then we have two independent clauses, a coordinating conjunction. So instead of and, we have but here. And then we have an introductory phrase leading into, so there's a dependent clause, introductory phrase, leading into this independent clause. So because we have independent clause, coordinating conjunction, we need a comma before the coordinating conjunction, and we need to set off this introductory phrase by commas. So that's what we need there. Otherwise, it was a run-on, is what that was. In the dungeon, again, we have another preposition introductory phrase, grammatical subject I immediately noticed how tight and narrow the halls were, so much so at some spots feeling claustrophobic. Okay, so that just needs a little bit of rewriting because this is a comma splice here. So in the dungeon, I immediately noticed how tight and narrow the walls were. So much so at some spots. I understand the meaning, right? That they were so narrow that some parts of the halls felt claustrophobic, right? That's the meaning of this dependent clause right here. So in the dungeon, I immediately noticed how tight and narrow. I might say I'm just going to try rewriting it because I feel like that might be the easiest thing to do. Okay, sorry. I'm already not liking my revision here. Actually, I don't think I'm going to rewrite it because I like that this person is not using a to be verb. In there, they're saying, I immediately noticed how tight and narrow the halls were. Okay, that's a to be verb, but you could say, this is where it gets annoying. But I don't like it because then we have a preposition. So it's like, do we want a preposition or to be verb? So we're gonna leave it like that. This might be a good place for a semicolon. Or we can just do this. This would be a okay. It's not the best revision, but again, I'm trying to take the meaning of the sentence and revise it so that it's grammatically goes along with the previous clause. Right in the dungeon, I immediately noticed how tight and narrow the halls were, comma, in some spots. So I'm here. I have independent clause, coordinating conjunction, and then another independent clause, and making sure there's a comma there. So it's not the best revision, but it's a first attempt at, because like I said, there's several ways that you could go about revising that, but that's not what this video lecture is about, which I know is turning into a very long video lecture. I'll just do like 2 more sentences. So, here the writer moves to a subordinating introductory phrase. As soon as I stepped inside, comma, I had to stop and get my bearings from the darkness. My eyes could not adjust fast enough with how gloomy and dim the area was. At certain room openings, I think, and then we're back to the prepositional introductory phrase, you are immediately greeted by random gusts of wind that carried the dust that had settled straight through the corridors. Yeah, we only needed a few fixes there. I mean, I could revise this for concision, but again, that's not the point of this video lecture. Okay, that's all I'm going to do for today. I feel like a long video lecture, but hopefully it was somewhat helpful to give you a contextual look at some grammatical things. It doesn't take you through everything that a comma can do, or in a semicolon and a colon, which I think are, if you're going to learn any or put effort into learning any grammar, like seriously, for best writing practices, you want to put that effort into independent clauses, dependent clauses, commas, semicolons, and colons, because with those tools and with the knowledge of those tools, you can write anything, and you can join sentences in any way possible, and you can use a myriad of variety of writing styles. So they're like I'd say if they're the most important. There's obviously other punctuation that I think is not really needed, things like em dashes and n dashes, and hyphens you need to know about really just for like what I showed with the combining the adjectives that are qualifying the nouns. So there's little things like that, but really you want that kind of set knowledge of connecting sentences and how do you do it, because without it can get really confusing for the reader in terms of your meaning. So Okay, this is it. That's all I got for today. So I'm not gonna. I'll go through the assignments in the announcement rather than adding to the length of this video. But if there are any questions or comments, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I will be talking to you guys soon. Bye bye.